We're walking to breakfast. to the exact same taco place as like 2 nights ago because like I can't. It was the best and we need it again in our lives. It's also right by a bookstore, not my favorite bookstore, but a bookstore. Mom. Hello everyone. Okay, so I have to go to work in like 2 seconds, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the whole Von Trapp Lodge. So basically, first of all, I got 2 books there. Let's talk about that first. So I didn't realize until I signed up for this thing that the Von Trapp family in The Sound of Music was actually based on a real family. And so this is the actual Maria, and this is her memoir. And I think it was her first book written just about like her life thus far at the moment that she wrote this. So I plan to read this and get to know a little bit more about the family. And then I also got this book, which was written by a historian and is on like just those really glossy, like coffee table sort of books. Like really nice. And it also was signed somewhere by the granddaughter of Maria, who I met when I went there, Christina. Anyway, what I wanted to say basically is what I learned about the family. And I want to preface this by saying that I have not watched The Sound of Music in decades. So I'm actually really excited to watch it again and almost like watch it for the first time as an adult, and especially watch it for the first time now that I know the family was actually real. Just to kind of compare like, okay, I noticed this in the movie and this is actually true. Or like, I noticed they did this in the movie and like, this is the reason and here's the backstory on it. So I think I'm going to save some of that stuff for a future video maybe if you guys are interested, because I did start watching it and I watched just like probably 30 minutes or so and I did notice some things already. So anyway, but let me tell you a little bit about Maria. So basically, she had a really rough life. Like basically her parents both died when she was super young. And so she was left in the care of her uncle, which was kind of like a foster care situation as opposed to like a loving uncle. Like basically she was abused no matter what she did, good or bad. So she just kind of turned into this naughty human being because like, why not? Like you're gonna get beat either way. You might as well just do what you want, whatever. And so that was kind of like her childhood, like super unloving and strict and abusive, like really problematic. Then when she was older, she started going to mass, but not for the church part of mass because she was actually an atheist, but just because she loved the music so much. She felt like she was going to a concert, not actually to mass. And so she would sit like in a Catholic church. Sometimes the choir, or in vintage Catholic churches, the choir is behind you. And so you never actually face the choir and see them singing. And she would actually do the opposite. She would have her back to the priest, to the altar, to all that. And she would just face the choir as if she was at a concert. And after doing this for a while, the priest was like, WTF, like, let me talk to this woman. Like, what is she doing? And so he talked to her, and I don't know the process, how long after that, but eventually she became a Christian. Whether it was that conversation and that moment she became a Christian, or if it kind of like spurred some thoughts that allowed her later to become a Christian. But she didn't just like become a Christian and like call it good. No, she like was like go big or go home, and she decided to sign up for this convent, or you don't really sign up, whatever it's called, like enroll yourself, I don't know, commit your life to being a nun. And she joined this convent that was like basically the strictest one she could find. She wanted to like fully like punish herself and devote herself to God. But she was still Maria. She was super, super naughty, and she was just getting in trouble all the time at the convent for just being herself. And so when the opportunity came up for a tutor to be needed by this family, she was the one that was kind of volunteered because she was naughty and they just wanted to get rid of her, I guess. And so that was the actual situation, that this captain needed a tutor for one of his kids who they had been sick. I don't want to say what they were sick with. I want to say it was scarlet fever, but like, don't trust me on that. Like, they were sick with something. I will read these books and I'll tell you more later. And as a result of that, she had like a heart murmur or some sort of a heart problem. And so she wasn't able to go to school, at least for that part of her life. She was in 5th grade, I believe. And so they basically needed like a homeschool teacher situation for her. And Maria did at some point go to like teaching school. So I don't know where in the story she went to teaching school, but she did go to college or whatever to be a teacher. And so, yeah, she went there and the whole family fell in love with her. And the captain was not like super horrible as is depicted in the movie, at least like the 30 minutes I've watched. He was actually like super lovely and not as intimidating as she thought he would be. And basically the whole family fell in love with her. And she was there for like 10 months or something, and that was like the end of her term. And at the end of her term, like, the kids didn't want her to leave, and they were like, listen, like, if you marry our dad, like, you won't have to leave, you can stay with us. And so she's like, well, like, I don't even know if no, actually, sorry, they went first to the dad, the captain, and they were like, we don't want Maria to leave, like, will you please marry her, whatever. And he was like, well, I don't even know if she likes me. And so then they like ran to Maria, and she was like cleaning like vases or something, vases, whatever. And they were like, hey, like, do you like our dad? And she's like, yeah, I like your dad. Like, she was caught off guard. She had no idea like the context of what kind of like they were talking about. And whatever. So she said yes. And then they were like, yes, she likes you. And then like later, I think the captain came in and was like, so we're engaged, right? Or something like that. And she just was so much in shock that she dropped the vase, and she was like, okay, like, hang on, I'll be right back. And I guess she ran to the convent, told them the situation, like crying, like, because she didn't want to marry him. And basically they said they didn't want her back and she should marry him. And so she came back, and he was like, well, and like, this is like hours later, and I guess he was still waiting for her. And he was like, and like, you know, whatever. And she was like, they say I have to marry you. So it was a very romantic proposal. Anyway, the reason that they ended up leaving Austria was actually because I don't know how long after they got married, but the family did become like pretty famous singers, and like they became really good. And I think they were actually classically trained singers before Maria came to the family, but they kind of lost the joy and lost the music when their mom died. And so she kind of brought it back, but I'm pretty sure they were trained as singers before. But anyway, and so they started like becoming like well known, and I don't know if they started traveling at that point or whatever, but Hitler heard about them and he wanted them to sing at his birthday, and they were like, hell to the no, like, we are not about to sing for Hitler. And they knew like if they said no, like, that would be a problem. And so they basically just like, they were really outdoorsy, and they would go out like hiking and backpacking like all the time. And so they basically just loaded up backpacks like as if they were off on a hike, and they just like walked out the back of their house and like walked to the train station, like past neighbors and everything, like no big deal, because they just pretended they were going like backpacking or something. Or I mean, they didn't really have to pretend, that was just what people thought. And they apparently were just in complete silence until they got out of the country, because it was just like such an emotionally tense situation. Like, it was very like nonchalant almost in like the way they went about it, but internally it was super tense. And they went to a few different countries for a while. Like, I think they were in Norway for a while. Don't quote me on this. I need to read the actual stuff. at one point they came to America, and somewhere in here, there were 3 kids that Maria had with the captain. So there are 7 initial children, and then Maria and the captain have 3 more. And the final one was born in the United States in Pennsylvania. And that child was this adorable little boy. I don't know how to say his name correctly. It's like Johannes or something. I don't know. I'll look it up later. And his daughter, his oldest kid, is the one that I met at the family lodge. So the lodge is basically owned by the youngest kid and his 2 kids. And the youngest kid is now 84, and he's the only one still alive from like the initial 10 children. The generation below obviously is still alive, but he's the last of that generation that is alive. And basically the story of how they ended up in Vermont is that I don't know if they were just traveling there or what, but basically Maria saw the mountains and she was like, wow, like this reminds me of home. And they found like this really crappy place, but it had this beautiful view of these mountains. And the captain was like, no, like we're not buying this place. And she was like, you can fix a house or something, but you can't fix a view or something like that. And so they ended up buying the place, fixing it up. He was really scared that like the roof was going to collapse on them because this was such a shady place. And it actually did one time when they were like eating dinner or something. Like they were actually in the house when it collapsed. And so they ended up like rebuilding, making it even better. And at one point they actually ended up adding like rooms to it and stuff, because after the popularity of the Von Trapp singers and the movie, like I guess at one point Maria was like, come visit us in Vermont, and had no idea like how many people would actually want to visit, and they needed places to stay because where they are is a resort town in Vermont, really well known for like skiing and stuff, but it wasn't really at the time, and so there weren't a lot of accommodations. Like it is pretty rural. And so they basically ended up like building a hotel and kind of, I think, living at the hotel in order to accommodate all these people that were visiting the family and mainly visiting Maria. And then that one burned down, so they built a new one, which is the one that's standing today. But like for years and years, Maria would be just like walking around the lodge, greeting guests. Like if you were to eat dinner there, she would make rounds around the dining room every single night, like greeting people. And she also like, I guess Christina was asked like, what recipes or whatever did your grandma pass on to you? And she's like, none, because her grandma Maria was so into like eating out and just felt like we have people that make their money through like service industries. Like the whole town of Stowe is basically, you're involved in some sort of service. And they're like, we need to, use them, like, whatever, we're gonna eat at restaurants. So I guess she wasn't really a cook herself, but she was super, super frugal, and like the family seems super rich at the beginning of the story, and they are, but they were not always rich by any means, and there were times when they like were really, really, really struggling. And Maria was very frugal. And I know the first person that was in our history tour talked about how when she was a teenager, she worked at the lodge, and she was like dyeing Easter eggs or something, and some of them like cracked or whatever, so she threw them away. And like Maria went behind her and like grabbed them out of the trash and like said something about how the cook could make egg salad out of these, and like we shouldn't waste the shells or something like that. Like there must have been like some eggs still connected to the shells. I'm not really sure, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. So yeah, I think that is all. Maria and basically everyone is all buried at the cemetery. One of the girls, the one who in the movie is shown in coming late all the time, like She was late basically for everything in her whole life because she had asthma and couldn't run, which I think is a lame excuse for being late all the time. Like, girl, plan ahead and leave early if you can't run. Anyway, and I don't run to stuff anyway. Anyway, whatever. But she ended up going somewhere to visit an aunt or something. I think she was over in Europe again, I'm not sure. And she ended up dying from an asthma attack. And they shipped her body back to Vermont, but it went to like the wrong, like I don't know if it went to the wrong stow, because there's like a stow in other states, or if it just got off at the wrong port or whatever. But she was late for her own funeral, which I think is hilarious, and also like probably really sad for all the people there, but I think it was funny. So yeah, all the kids, all like the grandkids, a lot of them are still alive, obviously, because they're not really that old. The one I met, Christina, she has like teenage-ish kids, I think, and she doesn't sing, and her brother, I don't think, sings. They run the lodge together, but there are basically one of the kids, I can't remember which kid, and a lot of their kids sing and stuff like that. So if I can find some of them, I will link them below. I think two of them are like my age, and they might be one generation down, like they might be the great grandkids of Maria, I'm not sure, but they sang and they're kind of like done with it now, even though they're in their 30s. And then this lady named Elizabeth Von Trapp, she's like a folk singer, I guess, and she still sings, but she's probably like my mom's age, I think. So like, yeah, that's basically all I have to say. If you have any questions about anything, let me know. And then I also do plan to read these books and rewatch the movie to see like what other interesting facts that I can find. I just really had no idea that they were a real family, and I think that makes the movie more interesting for me. So that is that. Let me know if you have questions, and I will talk to you later. I have one more Vermont vlog to go.